Due to recent YouTube updates, comments and likes have become more important than ever. I beg you to please consider doing exactly that. I read every comment that you write me and answer whenever possible and or need. I'm also open to suggestions for future content. My videos are created without the use of AI, so please support your fellow human content creator against clanker slop. Thank you. Patrols were unnecessary. The improvised shelter in the forest of the planet, its inhabitants called Dirt, didn't have any advanced defenses. Not to mention, the entire planet didn't have planetary defenses. Well, this did have some uses. Dirt was considered a death world, but only just barely classified as such. The gravity was stronger than average. The air had way too little oxygen, and worst of all, it had these microorganisms the inhabitants called viruses that could enter a creature's body and just shut it down. Even weaker variants of these were deadly enough to most spacefaring races that it would kill them in days. However, natural disasters, while numerous, had acceptable time frames in between them, and the planet, due to its tilt and spin around its sun, had quite varied biomes. With special clearance, military academies all around the galaxy would have short field exercises on this very planet, as long as its apex predator, the human, was not interacted with. As the Galactic Council, especially the Ariral Empire to which you belong to, were very much worried that these small-statured monkeys, with muscles bigger than their brains and the cognitive ability and dexterity to throw things, not just randomly but calculated, would discover FTL before proper countermeasures were put in place to fight them in case of war. Thankfully, humans were too concerned with waging war against each other to actually have positive societal changes in their tribes, so that was still many galactic cycles away. At least as long as they didn't get their hands on an FTL-ready ship that flew over their planet. You are here on a field survey and exercise with a colleague of yours going by the name of Ari, you being the escort and bodyguard of her. Your name was Aurora, and like every explorer of planet Dirt, you were dressed in a stealth suit, and not to take it off outside of your spacecraft. Every couple of hours you check the perimeter around your treehouse. To your annoyance, the human living in this area had discovered your first survey operation, and now you were very much afraid of humankind learning of your existence. Though quickly you and Ari learned that this human was quite isolated, so she convinced you to keep them alive, for now, while she studied them and the effects of long-term isolation. You agreed. And when the humans started delivering these strange red shrimp-like offerings to the treehouse, he almost won you over. You actually started thinking that perhaps humans weren't going to be the end of all space civilizations, even if it was just for a moment. Going past the base, the human housed in, you absentmindedly began chowing down on some shrimp. A full belly was important for survival after all, and the shrimp of this planet were very small. Not to mention, the red color was interesting. The ones on your planet were blue. But as you wandered, eyes looking anywhere but the ground below your feet, the sudden interruption of a wooden mannequin in your path caused you to catapult yourself forward. Surprised, you screamed aloud, "Meow!" before bolting it away on all fours. In your mind, you didn't just trip over one of the walking mannequins that were wandering the Dunkeltaler Vault, but you felt like you were under attack. As only a dangerous alien could cause you to trip like that. with your mind going everywhere but the reality of things, you hid in a bush and slowly stealthed your way deeper into the forest, hiding inside the crown of trees and behind boulders. It took you hours to slowly and stealthily reach the treehouse, where Ari was taking a nap. Arara? She groaned as you stepped inside. Perimeter compromised, you snarled. What? I was attacked. Arara? But I didn't see anything. All I know is suddenly I was lying on the floor, my shrimp scattered everywhere, and... Your companion nodded. As a true scientist, she already put one and one together. Then a military mind like yours didn't comprehend the idea that you in fact had a little accident. Your pride just wouldn't allow this. Probably the humans have constructed more advanced stealth capabilities than us. The horn in your voice was amusing to Ari. Right. In accordance to species avoidance training, I immediately retreated as they haven't attempted to eat me yet. Yet. Arara. Ari purred. What? Humans don't have stealth technology. The best they can do is make aircrafts that are invisible to their sonar technology. But I spent hours watching the human. He's adorable, and he would never attack out of nowhere. Then what attacked me? You were getting annoyed. Are you sure you didn't just trip? You puffed up your cheeks. Ari made a really smug face as she pushed against you. You wouldn't want to cause an intergalactic incident over tripping, would you? You got eerily quiet, but then Ari's gaze lowered. Initially, she just wanted to ask if your shrimps were okay and if she could have some, but then her heart skipped a beat. Arara? Still too much in shock over being a klutz, you didn't respond, your eyes just meeting hers. Where's your phaser? Kell leaned back in his chair. He was tired. But not in the sense of I'm about to pass out, but more in a I'm really done with this today sort of way. The last signal had taken hours to download, and then he still had to process it. With his eyes finally looking at something other than a console screen, he took the drive and shoved it into the drive box, sealing it and putting it under his arm. But just as he was about to leave, he remembered as he saw it. Right, he muttered. Kell had forgotten to clean the base again. He did shove most of the trash piles into a corner, but that just meant that there was a massive amount of it rolling right there behind him. The doctor sighed. Oh well. He ignored it. For now. Definitely just for now. Quietly, he wandered through his base to the garage, where he placed the driver box outside onto the circle platform and called the drone for pickup. But just as he was about to turn back inside, he noticed something. A white egg-shaped object about the size of his forearm. Curiously, he approached it. The gravel beneath his shoes crunched as he knelt down next to it. It was a strange white thing with a red button and what seemed to be a rubber grip. It was warm as he picked it up. The thing had the same matte white appearance as the alien ships near the treehouse. Was this a gift from these invisible aliens, perhaps? He handled the egg with care as he inspected it. It wasn't heavy per se. He could hold it easily with both hands. He pressed his ear against the white shell. It hummed faintly, and almost absentmindedly carried the egg into the base, closing the garage behind himself. Meanwhile, you stood just a few feet away from the base, watching as Dr. Kell took your gun. You slap both hands on your head, going down on your knees dramatically. This was exactly what you had been warned on. Humans were not allowed ever to touch any advanced tool from the galaxy. These creatures were great at retrofitting any technology they would take apart and, at least in comparison to other galactic species, would almost instantly understand them. You had to get it back somehow. But the base had no direct way into it. The metal doors were all locked. Even trying to jump the balcony, you could burn through the door with your multi-tool, but that would leave unmistakable holes in the metal. You crouched at the tree line, watching the human base glimmer faintly under the moon's light. The square building looked so primitive compared to anything you trained in, yet something about its harsh corners and unpainted field and unpainted concrete filled you with unreasonable dread. Your phaser was gone, probably humming softly in the human's hands right now, and the shame of losing it burned hotter than any campfire. You crept closer. The garage sat low on the right side of the structure, its walls stained with rust and oil. One large rolling door faced the clearing and a small side hatch. But you knew that the roof had a massive hole in it. You flattened your ears, pressing your face against the metal. Nothing. Only the faint electrical buzz that seemed to coat every human structure. You touched the metal with one paw. It was cool and rough. No active shielding, no security field, not even a lock keyed to biosigns. The arrogance of these creatures astonished you. With careful precision, you climbed up the walls of the garage and flung yourself into it through the hole in the roof. Dust and tiny flakes fell into your fur. You made a face and stepped inside. It smelled of machine oil and burnt plastic, and a faint salt of shrimp still clinging to your gloves from dinner. A faint red light came from a door made out of metal. Next to it was a keypad. You crouched by it, ears flicking. The little square thing blinked back at you like it knew something you didn't. 10 symbols, and one red button and one green. You recognized the concept of numbers, obviously. You memorized equations that could stabilize wormholes. You could calculate orbital drift in your sleep. But these shapes, that were not numbers. They were scribbles. The first one looked like a spear, the second like a chair with a limp leg. The third resembled a snake after a bad day. You traced your claw along the fourth symbol, wondering how a race could look at that triangle of lines and think 4. You felt personally insulted. You tried to recall the human counting system Ari had once mumbled through with... You tried to recall the human counting system Ari had once mumbled while half asleep. 1, 2, 3, then suddenly a 0, which represented nothing but was apparently something. It was madness. Primitive madness. You tapped the first symbol just to test the sound. The pet chirped, a polite, high-pitched beep. You jumped slightly, ears flattening. What a horrid noise. You pressed another. This time, a slightly deeper beep. And you frowned. Different tone for different numbers. Did that mean they sang their passwords? You hummed the pattern back softly to yourself, trying to mimic human tonal logic. though nothing happened. You pressed the green button for confirmation because surely any intelligent... You pressed the green button for confirmation because surely any species that considered itself intelligent would use green as something to confirm an option. And the pad blinked red, which universally meant, yeah, that answer was wrong. You bared your teeth at the keypad. You didn't snarl. Ari said that was unprofessional, but you considered it. You tried entering the sequence of primes again. The pad buzzed. You tried a pattern matching the rhythm of the human's footsteps you'd memorized earlier. The pad stayed silent. You typed free, 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 free because it had a certain mathematical harmony. The pad made a long, scolding tone that felt like being told to sit in a corner. You sat back on your heels and stared at it. Humans didn't even use base 12 or base 16 like reasonable civilizations. They used 10 because they had 10 fingers. You stared at your own hand. Sure, you do had 5 fingers on each, but... You didn't like this. You didn't like this at all. You pulled out your multi-tool and scanned the pad. The diagnostic read out came through as input format decimal integral sequence 0 to 9. Decimal, as in 10, as in counting by fingers. You made a low noise somewhere between disbelief and existential crisis. The more you studied the keypad, the more ridiculous it became. There was no encryption layer, no access timer, no defense mechanism. The system simply waited, patient and stupid, for someone to tell it the correct order of squiggles. You entered a sequence that corresponded to your own ship's registry number. Nothing. You tried your military ID hash because even primitives sometimes stole good ideas. Nothing again. You pressed cancel to clear it, and the pad chirped with a smug little sound. You started pressing random symbols just to spite it. The pad made a confused noise and locked for 10 seconds. You used that time to quietly curse the concept of decimal mathematics. When it unlocked, you simply pressed 1111. Because you were tired, and you felt like being humorous. And yet, the pad blinked green. You froze. The door slid open with a cheerful ding. You stared into the dark corridor beyond, stunned. That was it? 4 identical symbols? No encryption, no math. The door closed automatically again, without you entering, as you tried not to scream. After a long moment of quiet, you decided this was too humiliating to admit, and turned back towards the forest, tail low, dignitily trailing behind you like smoke. The base door clicked softly shut. You muttered under your breath, "Primitives!" The word came out almost fond, but was meant as an insult. You trudged all the way back to the treehouse where Ari was still lounging with a datapad and a box of shrimp. She didn't even look up. "Got it back?" she asked lazily. You stared into the middle distance. "No," you said, dropping onto the floor beside her. "Their mathematics are too primitive for my mind to comprehend." She handed you a shrimp without a word, crossing her legs. You accepted it, defeated. You decided that tomorrow you'd study these numbers. You'd learn their system, master it, and prove you were not outwitted by 10 squiggly glyphs. But just then... Hello? That noise. That was the human speaking in that uncouth language of his. That noise. Hello. You understood so far. Yes, that was a greeting. Your stealth suit still active, you peeked out of the treehouse window. Ari placing a hand on your shoulder, peeking over your head. The human had somehow managed to activate your weapon. It was unfolded, with handle and trigger. Uh-oh. That was Ari. She muttered that so quietly only you could hear it. Should we run? Kell then spoke. Hello? You didn't understand, neither did Ari, and yet his tone was awkward. So you dropped this at the base, and my boss would flip if he saw I have a gun? Alien or not? So, I guess I'll just, I'm just gonna be a good neighbor and return it, okay? A part of Kell wanted to keep it, to fight those living mannequins like an old southern farmer. Your gaze shifted to Ari, whose face resembled that of the third button on the keypad. She was being smug right now, looking at you like she was saying, "Told you so." The human then dropped the gun, causing it to fire. Scared, Kell jumped back as the blue laser shot forth into a tree, his legs shaking while your eyes narrowed. Humans, you thought as you slid through the window opening. Kell could see your footsteps through the parting grass. He gulped audibly, and you could smell his fear as you towered over him. You knew he couldn't see you as you stared him down, but he could feel the warmth radiating from your body. These borderline primeval apes didn't understand higher languages such as Galactic Common. As such, there was no point in trying to communicate your reluctant thank you with your speech. And so, Ari's eyes widened as she snickered. You moved before you could flinch. Kell's breath caught when the air shifted, night itself seemingly folding closer around him. A shape too large and too warm, lowered in front of him, unseen but impossible to ignore. He could feel it breathe, slow and deep like the sound of a calm engine idling just beneath the wind. Then the invisible weight moved nearer still. Something smooth brushed against his temple, careful and cold at first, then warming quickly with the contact. Was that a thumb that he felt, tracing a line along his jaw? Studying the strange texture of human skin, perhaps? He froze, heart hammering against his ribs. He should have run, but he didn't. He was too scared. The unseen hand slid to the back of his neck and tilted his head upward. For an instant, the world went quiet. No crickets, no wind. Just a faint hum of whatever cloaking field surrounded the creature and the trembling sound of his own breathing. Then something warm and soft pressed against his forehead. It wasn't a hard touch, more a lingering pressure, a careful test as if asking for permission. Then the heat deepened, spreading through his scalp, down to his chest. A faint pulse passed through the air like static before a storm, humming in time with the beat of his heart. Stayed there long enough for him to understand that this was not a threat, it was gratitude. A thank you spoken through touch instead of words. Or in other words, an alien was kissing him. Oh God, an alien was kissing him. He almost hyperventilated. And then it was gone. The weight lifted, the air cooled, and he found himself hovering for a dizzy half-second before being dropped, gently, like a child placed on the ground after a dance. He landed on his rear with a startled grunt, staring into the dark where the warmth had been just now. The gun now hovered over him, neatly, as you holstered it, clipped by invisible hands. The clearing smelled faintly of ozone and something sweet, like shrimp roasting over static. By the time he managed to look up, the night had swallowed the shape whole. Only the faint shimmer of disturbed grass marked where it had crouched. Kell scrambled to his feet, muttered something that might have been fangs, and ran for the safety of the base, his boots clattering distant in the gravel. From the treehouse, you then heard a quiet purr. I thought touching, what did you call them? Lesser species was beneath you. You folded your arms, still watching the base door glow faintly in the distance. Diplomatic courtesy, you snarled. Hey, you reached the end of the video. That makes you part of an exclusive club. Our secret password is Cheap Thrills. Put the secret message in your comment below to tell fellow members you watched the video until the very end. Lastly, before I say goodbye, I would normally shout out my channel members. However, due to losing monetization, I currently do not have access to both channel memberships as well as a list of previous channel members. Nevertheless, I'm eternally grateful to the channel members I used to have, and in the case memberships get reinstated, I hope I'll see you again. Thank you for watching.